All right, welcome to lesson 7. We're looking at continue with child development, but we're going to look at cognitive development. So in lesson 6, we looked at physical development. Now we're going to move on to the second pillar of child development, which is cognitive development. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to just stop for a second. I want you to fill this out at the beginning of the lecture, and then you'll have a chance to go back and add to it, change some things, and then we're going to share this in our collaborate time. So basically, I want you to write in, ideally, I would like to teach grade 1, 6, 12, post-secondary, because students at this developmental stage, and then students from your readings, give me an idea of what they do at this stage. And then I'm least interested in teaching grade 6 because students in this developmental stage do what? And start to be specific, start to use those terms that you read in chapter 2 from your reading. Okay, and then I'm most interested in teaching children in Piaget's which stage? Because. So again, stop the video right now, do this. At the end, you'll also have a chance to do a little bit, and then you will share this in the collaborate time. Okay, so again, looking at these pillars, we looked at physical, biological, we're looking at cognitive today, and then we're going to continue on with personal, social, moral development a little later on. Okay. So basically, as a teacher, you need to understand how and why learning occurs or does not occur. It's kind of the thing we do. It's the thing that we're focused on. And if you don't have a clue how the child is actually cognitively in their head, how they're actually processing the content, the information, the examples that you are giving, you are not going to be as an effective and amazing teacher as you possibly could be. So it's important that you actually have an understanding of how learning actually occurs. Okay, so you want to look at how learning processes evolve and adapt over time. As we'll look at in Piaget's theories, the way that children view the world and actually take in information and learn new ideas actually changes. But there's some basics to how all of us learn, and that's what I'm going to go through right now. So schema. Schema is the basic structure for organizing information. So when you're starting to learn something, it's the basic structure that in your brain, how you actually organize it. So this organized information is then available for the child to access when faced with a situation again or a new situation. So for example, a child at the age of 18 months will put everything in his mouth because he's figured out that he can actually gain information from sticking stuff in his mouth. And ultimately he can get something to eat. But that is a way, that's a schema, basic structure for organizing. It's like, okay, I need to figure out what this is. I will now stuff it in my mouth, and that's a way that I can gain information. Okay. Assimilation is when you adapt outside information into your current way of thinking. So say a child may have figured out that the word cat refers to that fuzzy four-legged animal that runs around the house. Their existing schema, so how they've organized that information in their head, their organized information is adequate to make sense of what they observe. So when they see the cat go by, they're like, okay, that's a cat because I've organized that information in my head. So if they see another cat, usually then they go, oh, that thing looks like the thing in my house, and everybody keeps referring to it as cat, and so they'll go, oh, that must be another cat. So that's assimilation. So you're adapting outside information into your way of thinking. Accommodation is when you have to modify your schema. So this is when you have to modify your schema in order to make sense of something that is new and different. So you're presented with a new situation in which you have no prior experience. So, for example, my oldest daughter, Alita is her name, when she was in kindergarten and going on the school bus for the first time, I took her excitedly to the school bus stop, and the door opened, and she looked up, and of course, all you see are the steps and the driver, And she looked back at me with this little disappointed face and went, "Is this it?" And I thought, she's never been on a bus. She has no idea that once she walks up the stairs and turns the corner that there's, seats and people and backpacks and smells and, laughter and talking. But she had no idea. So she had to accommodate. As soon as she went up those steps, she saw something she'd never seen before. She had to accommodate what was happening in her little brain. Okay, so that's what happens then is we have this disequilibrium to equilibrium. And we're going to talk about that right away here. Okay, oops. Oh, whoops. What is happening? Oh, I know. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to back to this slide. I wanted to go to here. That's what I want. Okay, so this is what happens when a child is actually learning anything. So they have, I'm just going to find my pencil here. So they have incoming information. Incoming information. So the brain receives incoming information through the senses. So either the brain recognizes the new information as being slightly different from the existing schema. There might be a slight disequilibrium. So disequilibrium is when the brain is slightly out of balance. There's a little bit of mental discomfort. It's kind of like, what is happening here? I can't quite, that cat is actually a little bigger than mine, but it still meows, but it's not as fuzzy as mine. However, then the brain will quickly assimilates the new information to existing schemas. So say the cat, it's like, okay, so I actually know that my cat has 4 legs, it meows, and it's furry. This cat has 4 legs, meows, but it's not very furry, but it still must be a cat because it fits all these other categories. And then the brain comes back to equilibrium. So the brain in equilibrium returns to balance until new information is encountered and the process begins again. So the brain ultimately does not want to be in disequilibrium. It wants to be in equilibrium. Okay, I'm going to erase those. So now let's look at the other side when we have when our learning is slightly different. So again, we have that incoming information. Brain receives information through the senses. So say now the child sees a dog. They have not seen a dog before. Has 4 legs, it's kind of furry, but it barks instead of meows. So the brain encounters information that cannot be easily explained or understood using existing schemes. So it's like, wait, this is wrong. This animal should not make that sound. It should make a meowing sound. So there's considerable disequilibrium. So the brain is out of balance. The child cannot figure out what this animal is because they can't. It doesn't fit how they've organized their ideas in their heads. So then this is accommodation, which is different than assimilation. Okay, it's different than assimilation. The brain accommodates the new information by modifying, and this is the important part here, modifying existing schema or creating entirely new schema. So the child is like, okay, well, this is some kind of animal, but it can't be a dog, it can't be a cat, so it must be something else. So now I have to listen and figure out, what are these people calling it? Oh, they're calling it a different word. It's a dog. So they're modifying their schema, and they are learning that a fuzzy 4-legged animal that says meow is a cat, and a fuzzy 4-legged animal that barks is a dog. Then ultimately they're back to equilibrium. Where we want our students to be is we want them to be here. We want to be always, that's a nice circle. We want them always to be a little bit in disequilibrium. We want them to be challenging what they already have. We want them to be thinking, oh, that's a little bit different. What's my background? What do I already know? And then, oh, but I'm seeing something different. I need to it needs to either assimilate or I need to accommodate my own thinking. We don't want to leave our students in this area for too long. It's not comfortable. Nobody likes to be there. But but a little bit of slight disequilibrium is basically what education is. We want them to be slightly cognitively uncomfortable, or else we're actually not teaching them anything new. We're just reinforcing everything that they've already known coming into class. Okay, now, okay, I gotta get rid of that. There we go. Now let's go back to here. So this is going to be what's going to happen in Collaborate. So with the buddy, you're going to talk through these concepts because they're pretty big concepts, and it's important that you have a good grasp of them. So we're going to talk through schema, assimilation, accommodation, process from the reading. So the child with the dog and the cat, it's the cartoons, pages 15, 16. So have specifically a look at those and be ready to either answer a lot of questions or ask a lot of questions around schema, assimilation, and accommodation. And ultimately, disequilibrium and equilibrium. That's not in the reading, but you can bring that in here as well. Okay, so let's look at, again, let's look at what happens around this sense of equilibrium, disequilibrium. So let's say, I'll give you another example because I think examples are always a good thing. So a student, say a high school student, comes in with the existing schema that poetry is always short, it always rhymes, and it's always about love. So then the teacher, Mr. Nice, presents a poem that is long, doesn't rhyme, and is about a social issue, a current social issue. So Hugh, our high school student, will experience some disequilibrium because Hugh believes that poetry is only short, rhyming, and about love. Okay, so again, he will have to assimilate. He will have to say, Hugh checks his own idea of poetry against Mr. Nice's new information about poetry, and he says, okay, I'm going to assimilate this new information that a poem can be long and does not have to rhyme. I will assimilate that because it's close enough and I can accept that. Accommodate is maybe Hugh comes back to class the next day with a new idea of poetry. Mr. Nice now introduces song lyrics. Hugh now, because he's grown his idea of what poetry is by assimilating the social issue poem, now he is going, okay, now I can actually accept song lyrics because and he will start to accommodate and bring those in too. Okay, and sometimes we have kids who will just avoid. They will just avoid learning anything new. No, that doesn't. Hugh might have said, no, poetry is always short, rhyming, and about love. Song lyrics are not poetry. And we have kids that come in grade 1, grade 6, grade 9, grade 12 that are just, they will not accept. We have adults who just will not accept anything that does not fit their schema. They do not want to be in that state of disequilibrium where, oh, maybe my schema is not correct. Maybe the way that I have organized this information or my perspective is actually needs to be changed. Okay, and then ultimately, once Hugh has either assimilated or accommodated, then Hugh comes back to the state of equilibrium. Okay, again, we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about this in our Collaborate time, but it's important that you know basically how are kids learning and the terminology that goes around that. Okay, I'm going to stop this particular recording because, again, you might want to come back to just this section. The next section, section B, I'm going to talk specifically about Piaget's stages of cognitive development.